the morning, 9:18 a.m. Thursday afternoon. Not playing. I don't know. It's not even Thursday. It's Tuesday? Man, early in the week. Jesus, dude. I already want it to be the end of the week. Honestly, I'm over this week already. That was pretty fast, right? But anyways, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video. This is Web Dev Journey, and in today's video, we're gonna be talking about getting external data for an entire page. In the last video, if you did not watch it, I highly recommend you watch it because we're gonna be doing some of the things we did in the last video. But in the last video, what we did was get external data for content within a page. Not the whole page needs content. Not that the whole page needs external data. There's a specific, section within that page that needs external data, and that's what we did in the last video. In this video, like I said, the whole page needs data, so it will not render until you have that data. So let's just get right into it. No, sorry, but before we get into it, guys, I do want to say some things. First of all, I greatly appreciate you guys watching my videos. It really does mean a lot to me, and it really does help me out, believe it or not. I'm pretty sure you believe it because everybody says that, right? So second thing is I created a new YouTube channel, which is called What Grinds My Bit. Link is going to be down below. And that's, I've already talked about this, but it just talks about my experience in the dev field. Mostly bad experiences that I've had, because that just makes it a better video talking about bad experiences. But yeah, it's just my experience as a dev, working as a dev. So if you're interested in that, go subscribe to that channel. Thirdly is, so I made changes to the folder, the whole project. So what I did was, obviously, as you can see, there's to-do nows, and I got an API that actually focuses on just to-dos, right? Even though you're going to see in a bit, these to-dos aren't really I think they're just gibberish, but it's an API, whatever. So all I did was switch out the API of news to to-dos, and I'm going to show you how that looks like. So let me show you. This is the API so if you go to /to-dos, it will give you actually 200 to-dos, which is fantastic. And every one of them has a unique ID, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way to 200. So they have unique IDs, which is a good thing because we're going to be using that. And also, it's just static, content. So if I go to, if I want to see the ID number 76 to do, if I hit enter, it will give me 76 right here in the title, and if it's completed or not, right? Which is pretty cool. So that's why I chose this, because I needed this kind of structure where everyone has a unique ID, and that. So anyways, that's what I did. So without further ado, let's just get right into it, because there's nothing else to update you guys on. So, oh yeah, there is one more thing. Sorry. Inside the to-dos, this used to be blogs. And then we used to have a folder called blog and then index.js inside that folder, right? All I did was just remove that blog folder with the index.js and just removed it outside and just, made this wildcard, id.js, because we're going to be filtering the to-dos by their ID, right? So once they hit this page, it's going to be a specific to-do. So just making that, because that's going to be very important in this video. So let's just get right into it. Like I said, we're going to be using, I don't think I said this, but we're going to be using two functions to get external data for an entire page. The first one going to be export async function. God, I was going to forget. Get static path. This is the first function we're going to be using. The second function is literally the same thing as this one that we used before. So I'm just copy this and paste it right here, so that way we could just have it, and I'll show you what's going on. So actually, let me get rid of this stuff and just make this a little bit nicer and get revalidate. There we go. It just makes it a little bit nicer. That's it. Nothing too fancy, right? So we're going to be using these two functions. Now, I do want to mention things about these two functions, or the way you could look at them at least. So the way you could look at get static props, this function, its job is to literally grab data and then display it onto the component, or give props to the component, so that way we could use those props to display the things, right? So basically, this function right here just grabbing the data so that way we could actually display that data. The other function, the getStaticPath function, you can think of this function as filtering which, pages you actually want to pre-render at build time, right? Because this is build time. This is all during build time. So which pages you want to pre-render at build time. That's what you could think of this as. And the reason why I'm saying that is because it'll make it much more easier once we start going through this. So in this case, let's say we wanted to, we just want to pre-render ID 14, 32, and 39, whatever. Just 3 of them, right? Instead of the 200, we only want to pre-render 3 pages because we know those 3 pages are going to be the hit the most. So it makes sense to, pre-render those at build time so that way it could be stashed in the CDN and not server-side render every single one of them so far. So yeah, it's just filtering which ones you actually want to pre-render. In the first case, in the first scenario, what we're going to do is pre-render all 200 of them, so that way you can see how you do that. And then we're going to be pre-rendering certain to-dos. So let's just get right into it. So the first thing we need to do is actually grab the list of like all the to-dos, because like I said, within this list, we need to choose which ones we want to pre-render. So now that we have a list of the to-dos, our job now is to filter out this list to, return an array of to-dos that we want to pre-render. Sorry, I'm thinking like super hard. I don't know why, and then trying to say the same thing. Anyways, so now that we have the list, let's try to filter out which ones we want to pre-render. But first, let's talk about how Next.js expects you to return the data that you want to pre-render, right? So Next.js expects you to return an array filled with objects. Each object is going to be a page. So right now I have 3 objects. So that means that I only want to pre-render 3 pages. And inside these objects, what it needs to have is literally params, and we'll talk about this in a bit, ID 1. Or it has to be a string, 1. So this might look weird, okay? And I'm going to do this. So that way you can see exactly what we're doing. So this is how Next.js expects you to return the data. So what is this params ID 1? So basically you could think of it as like this. Okay, Next.js, we want to pre-render anything with the parameters that parameter ID equals to 1, right? Since the parameter is, remember how we grabbed our parameters? It's literally from this wildcard ID right here. We want to pre-render every page that has a parameter ID set to 1. And going to the next one. Hey, we want to pre-render a page with the parameter of ID equal to 2. We want to pre-render the page with parameter ID equal to 3. Now, if I had this as something else, let's say that I had this named as cat, well, I will say right here, we want to pre-render the parameters or the pages with the parameter of cat, since I named it cat, with the ID of 1. Or, sorry, of cat of whatever. So basically you could think of this is the file name ID, and this is what we want to filter the to-dos as. So I want to filter the to-dos by their unique ID, right? So this is their unique ID. So basically the parameters of the file name ID and the actual what do you want to filter by? And I want to filter by their ID, which is 1 and 2 and 3. And you'll see this more and more. I hope that made sense, because I hope really this is the most confusing part. That's basically it. This is the most confusing part. That is it. After you get this, you're pretty much good to go. So let's actually, pre-render all 200 of them, and let's see if it does make sense. So what I'm gonna do is literally just make a const of path, and we're gonna do we're gonna just map through all of these, so that way it creates you know how maps works. I'm not even gonna talk about it. So map. And with everything, we're going to get a specific to-do. And what we're going to do is return. Yeah, we're going to return. Oops, no, let's not do that. Let's go right here. Yeah, we're going to return an object just like so. So that way you can understand what's going on. We're going to return an object, like I said right here. Let me just grab this. We're going to return an object with the ID, it has to be the file name. So with the file name, which is ID, set to the to-do that we got back, to-do.id, because that's what we want to render or filter our to-dos is by their ID. So we want to render every page that has a parameter of the file name ID, and we're going to be filtering the to-dos by their to-do dot or their IDs. Man, I'm really sorry that it doesn't make sense, but I'm really hoping that made sense. I mean, like I said, this is going to be the most difficult part, just understanding this little bit. But after you get this, it's pretty much straightforward. So now that we have every single to-do, since we're mapping it, and we're returning it into an array, so the array is going to look like this, but it's going to have 200 of them. Now what we could do is return an object with path and fallback equal to false. And we'll talk about this later on in the video, because this is pretty important as well, but I'm not going to talk about this right now. We'll talk about that in a bit. Okay, so like I said, this function right here, the only job it needs to do is filter out which path or which to-dos we want to pre-render. And now that we're returning that right here, now these two coincide, like they work together seamlessly, right? So now that we have this and returning path, and here we could actually call in context. We're gonna see in the docs that it's called context, but essentially what this is literally the path. So it's just passing this, what we got right here, into right here and get static props. Everything is done by the backend, so you don't even have to worry about what's going on. You just need to know that once you return path, you could actually use path within the get static props, and then start doing things with this data in here. But since I'm gonna just leave it at context right now, so it'll make a lot more sense later on. You know what? I'm gonna just name it path, so it'll make sense right now. Yeah, I'm gonna just name it path, so that way it'll make sense. Now, like I said, the job of the get static props is to literally grab the data, so that way we could render the data in here. So we're gonna render every single data that path has. Now, path has 200, pages that we want to pre-render. So this is going to run essentially 200 times, because we need to grab the to-dos for every single to-do. This is why I said that it might not be a good idea to pre-render thousands of pages. Maybe you want to do a select few, but this is the reason why. Whatever the amount of pages you want to pre-render in here, whatever the array amount is, that's how many times this is going to run. So in this case, since we're doing 200 of them, this function is going to essentially run 200 times. So yeah, let's try to keep it at a down low. So anyways, so what we need to do is actually grab the IDs within this path, like yeah, the IDs of this path, because that's what we're going to be rendering them, right? We need the ID, so that way we could do /1, /2, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So right here, what I'm gonna do is const ID. We're gonna set that equal to path dot params dot ID. It's literally this right here, what I'm grabbing. So path dot params, and then within that there's an object called ID, and that's where the ID lives, right? And now we have the ID of the array. And like I said, this is going to run 200 times. So right now, if we essentially, it's going to run the very first one. So the ID is going to be, oh, by the way, you do need to return it as a string. I forgot about that. So I need to do toString right here. There you go. Is that right? .toString. Yeah, so that should work. Anyways, so now the ID right here is going to be 1 essentially. And what we're going to do now is not to-do list, is actually just one specific to-do. And we're going to be fetching, so I'm going to make these into backtick, so that way we could use /the ID. Now remember how we grabbed a specific to-do? It's literally /to-dos and then their ID. So that's why I'm doing that. So we're going to grab a specific to-do. And now what I'm going to do is, instead of to-dos, I'm going to say to-do JSON. We're going to make it into a JSON. It's essentially the same thing. Like I said, it's essentially the same thing what we did, and what we're going to return is the to-do JSON right here, and that's it. Now up here, we can start using this specific data. So up here, what we're going to do is I'm going to just destructure this and just grab that to-do JSON, go right here, and let's see what they have, right? So they have the user ID, title, and completer. So what we're going to do is display all that. So inside this div, what I'm going to do is do an h1 with to-do.json, and we're going to grab the title. So to-do.json.title. What else do they have again? They have the ID, title, user ID, and completed. So let's just do all that. Let's just the to-do ID, that's going to be within the dot ID. We're also going to do user ID. Why not, right? User ID, which is to-do dot user ID over here. So user ID, and also lastly is completed. So completed, and we're going to do to-do JSON dot completed. So completed, and that's pretty much it, right? So let me actually walk this. Well, let's see if this works. So now, if it should be running, right? Hopefully there's no, okay, successfully. So let's go to our page and let's see if this is actually running. So right now we have our to-dos, all of our to-dos. And if I click on a certain to-do, as you can see down here in the bottom left, it's going to go to /80. So if I click on this, we should grab, there you go, the title, the to-do ID, the user ID 4, and also completed. Oh yeah, completed is, it's a Boolean here. So what I need to do over here in our code is actually make this dot to string. All right, so now that we have that, now we go over here. See, there you go, true. If I go, let's go back. Let's go to another one. This is 37. If I go to 37, as you can see, different stuff. It's actually grabbing, this stuff is already pre-rendered, guys. These pages are already pre-rendered, so there is no like wait time. As you can see, there really isn't no wait time. I could just click on one and there you go, false 103.6. So that's how you do it, guys, for just to render all of them. Now let's focus on, or let's actually walk through the code one more time so that way you could see what's going on. So first of all, to make this page actually work, we need to, tell Next.js which pages or which to-dos, specific to-dos, we want to render. And we want to filter the to-dos by their ID. So what we need to do is grab the list first of all the to-dos, right? And then filter them. In this case, we didn't filter, we just literally just got all 200 of them. And we stored it inside of path by doing a map. And the way we need to return it is like this. So we need to grab the parameters of the file name, which is ID, and we're going to be filtering by the to-dos ID. Now, like I said, if I name this file cat, this would have to be cat. And we'll do an example in the end of the video so that way you could just look how that's done. Anyways, so yeah, now that we have all the to-dos that we want to pre-render, all we do is just return the array, which is path, and fallback equal to false. Like I said, I will talk about this in a bit. And then now that we filtered which ones we want to do, now we need to get them onto the screen, display that data. So what we're going to do is pass in paths in here. Like I said, they have context, but to make this a little bit easier so that way you understand, this works together. These two work together. So now that you're returning this, getStaticProps knows about it. So you could actually use path in here and actually grab the ID that you're trying to, filter by. So we're grabbing the ID of path.params.id, which is essentially 1 for right now, since it's going to be the first time running. And then we're going to grab that specific to do, so /to-do/1, and then, JSON, whatever. And then that's where we're going to return the props, which is literally the props of this up here, which is this right here. It's going to return this object up here. And now what we could do is, grab the title, grab their ID, grab the user ID, grab if it's completed or not, and display the data like that. It's pretty simple, right? It's just this part right here, honestly, guys. It's just this part where is a little bit confusing, and that's only because it's expecting like params, ID, and what to filter as. And don't worry, like I said, in the end of the video, we are going to talk about that a little bit more. But now let's talk about like how to filter the ones that you actually want, right? Let's say that you only want 5, ID 5. Let's actually do it right now. So I'm gonna just comment this out. So let's say that I'm gonna actually do this const. Path is going to equal this. It's going to equal an array, and we only want to do, let's say 1, 2, 3. We only want to, pre-render the to-dos with the ID of 1, 2, and 3. That is it. So now, and fallback is still false. Now, fallback false. This is where we're going to start talking about fallback, right? So now, if I go to the page again, let's go over here, and let's refresh this, good measure. And let's go to ID, or this is 1, right? So as you can see, 1 works, right? If I go to 2, 2 works. If I go to 3, 3 works, right? But if I go to 4, you're gonna see that we get a 404, okay? And this is due because of the fallback. Now this is where it's important. So any page that was not pre-rendered, if you do fallback false, it's literally going to give you a 404. 404. I don't know why I said it. But anyways, yeah, if you do fallback to false, every page that was not pre-rendered right here, which is everything a lot, right? It's going to give you a 404. So I could never do, I can't go to 300 or 200. I can't go to, 12. I don't have those pages pre-rendered, so Next.js is going to be like, well, you don't have them pre-rendered. I'm going to give you a 404. But we do have 1 pre-rendered, which is why that works still, and also 2 and 3, right? Now, fallback actually gives you 3 options. You can actually have 3 options here: false, true, and blocking. So now that you know what false is, it's basically just giving you a 404 for all the pages that are not pre-rendered. If we switch this to true, Control Save. Now with true, yeah, we're going to have to add a little bit of code, but basically with true, it's not going to give you a 404. It's going to show the client or the user a bit of code that you wrote. So let's actually talk about that bit of code. So when you say fallback true, basically it's saying that, hey, we don't have that data right now, but let me go grab it. But in the meantime, show this. All right, and this is, let's do that right now. It's going to be a little bit confusing. So what we're going to show is if, and we do need router for this, right? Because this is going to make sense if I write it down. So router dot is fallback, like that. And what we're going to do is return, well, we're going to just return another div. We're going to say loading dot. So now that we have the router loading or fallback and fallback equal true, let's see how this works, right? So what it should do is literally just say router. If we don't have a specific to do, what it's going to do is, tell it to render this bit of code first while it grabs the data, and then once it has the data, render this bit of code. All right. So let's try it out. So if I go to I already did it right here. So if I go to 2, same thing. But if I go to 4 again, look at this right here, loading. It should say loading because it doesn't have the data for 4. Remember, 4 is not pre-rendered. So if I hit enter, loading, there you saw that loading, and then it gives my data back. 5, loading, and then gets my data back, which is a good thing, right? So no longer are we getting 404s. We're actually grabbing our data, but it takes a little while now. So now let's talk about the other one, which is blocking. And this is a string. Blocking. What is this? Right? So blocking is literally server-side rendering. So if you don't have a pre-rendered page, what it's going to do is essentially do exactly the same thing as when fallback equals to true, but the only difference is it's not going to be, hitting this. It's not going to give you this at all. It's just going to go to the server, grab the data, and then come back. Just like any old, server-side rendering. It's exactly like that. So we could give this a try. If I go to, damn it, If I go to /2, it still works. No, nothing like that. But if I go to like let's do 8, you're not going to see that loading. Make sure to pay attention right here. You're not going to see loading, but you will get the data back. As you see, loading, but you do get the data back. Let's go to 9, or let's go to 18. No loading, but you do get the data back. That's because it's actually hitting the server and it's spitting up all the HTML that it needs to, and then sending it out to you. Like I said, it's essentially the same thing as the true, but without the fallback HTML that you provided. So, so that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Now, if you want to stick around, because I am going to do exactly the same thing, but within a folder that has a file, like we had in the old video, in the last video, the folder file structure. Stick around, but if you're not, thank you for watching, guys. See you in the next one where we're going to be talking about get server-side props. But anyways, for those guys that want to look at this, well, it's exactly the same thing. So the way we had it before was a folder, and we're gonna say to do, or actually this is going to be the wildcard to do, right? Because this is going to be a specific to do, and inside this folder we had I'm gonna actually bring this up here. Yeah, well, actually let me stop this because it's going to probably give me some errors. So I'm gonna move this up here, and what we did was just call this index.js, right? So rename index.js. Now essentially this should work the same thing, but the only difference is now that we have the name as to do, now what we need to do is in get static path, what we need to say is that, hey, we want to render every page that has the parameters of the file name, which is no longer ID, is actually to do, right? So of control D to do, and we want to pre-render the ID of 1, 2, and 3. That's basically it. That's what I wanted to show you guys. Whatever the name is, that's what you need to put it here. So if I control save this should hopefully, man, fingers crossed, it should work the same way. So if I go back to /to-dos, oh wait, it's not even running. Thank God, man, my heart dropped. If I go to npm run dev, let's try this out. There you go. Let's get rid of that. There you go. You got all the to-dos. Let's click on one of them. 15. Oh man. Wait. Cannot read property to string of undefined. Let me see what's going on. This is what I was afraid of. Oof. Oh, and I figured out why, by the way. It's because when we do right here in get static props, we're doing path.params.id, but it's no longer ID, as you can see, is actually .to do. So it's .to do. So control save. Now if we go back, there you go, it works. Whoo! So see, it's pretty much whatever you name the file, pretty much follow this little structure right here. Parameters of file name with the ID of whatever, right? So params to do and the ID of the to do. But since we did, I liked it the other way with the ID because it made a lot more sense doing it that way. But anyways, guys, that's pretty much it. This is the how we had it in the last video, the structure anyways, and I'm showing you how you could do it with that structure as well. It's pretty simple. Now we know fallback, blocking, true and false, what those are, which is very, very important in my opinion. But anyways, that's it, guys, for this video. I hope you liked it. I hope you learned something new. And yeah, if you did, please hit that like button, comment down below, subscribe if you have not. And if you want to support me in any other way, there are going to be links down below. So I would greatly appreciate it. And I will see you in the next video where we talk about get server-side props. So thank you guys. Bye.